So before we begin, I would like to do some recaps, as I said. Those who just joined in, thank you for joining today's meeting. Today is the final meeting for our first game project. So next week we'll be beginning our next game project, which is something about rockets, and we'll be learning more about rigid body and apply more about the particle systems, and also something new that we'll be learning today and apply more in that game project, which are called tags. Okay, so don't worry about what tags are. We will be getting over that today when we finish our game project. But since we're finishing our game project, that means next week is the day when the GDC team announces the winner for the best game project award. So this applies to both not really to the GDC team, but more to the GDC members. So what you're gonna have to do, I'll be sending out some rubric today, so it can guide you into how you should be designing your game and applying it. A lot of details will come out today evening, but you'll have literally till today and before Saturday, which is Friday. So till Friday 8 p.m. because Saturday we'll be announcing the winner right after the GDC meeting. Okay, and the guy who does get the meeting, right? The person or the woman who gets the winner, you already know it. You get 50,000 XP and 10,000 GDC coins. All right, so that's kind of a lot, and I don't think that's the right amount, but you could check it later in the announcements channel. But that means you're gonna get new roles, and you also get an additional role, which is literally the game award winner, and your name will just literally come up on top of everyone in the Discord role. So thanks to you on that. Okay, and you get a new role color as well temporarily. It lasts for about a week, and it will go away automatically. All right. Um, so that's really it on that game awards, and also announcing that today is our final game project day. Let me just change to the screen for now. Let me just click on this so you guys can see it. All right. I'm also trying to do my best to change the quality of the things that you're seeing right now on the screen. I don't know what's really the reason. It's probably because of the capture card I'm using. Hopefully, I'm going to try increasing the quality while I'm streaming my screen and my face at the same time using the OBS virtual camera. But aside on that, yeah, it's just I'm trying to do my best to everything. But yes, before the end of today's meeting, be sure to share all the assignments in the submissions channel. I'll be sure to give you all the XPs and stuff as needed after giving all the valid information. All right. I've already seen that this only person, great job. You have already submitted it. I haven't checked it yet, but it does look promising. And yeah, you will most probably get the coins if you follow the rules. All right. But yeah, so just make sure you do that before today's meeting. Hopefully, I don't want you guys to work on that right now, so you could focus on this meeting. But yeah, another thing that I also want to talk about is just keeping an eye out and trying to remind you all. There are new Instagram uploads. I don't see that a lot of you are. I don't see that the GDC is getting a lot of notifications on the mentions. So be sure to try if your account is private. Be sure to make sure that you do accept our follow requests so that we can see that okay you've mentioned us. Because if your account is private and we're not following you, then we don't know if you have shared the story or not. So just make sure that if you're private, just let me know via the ticketing system, or just let me know by message on Instagram or Discord that your account is private and you need to let the GDC know that you need to follow them. So just let me know if that's the case. Another thing is if your account is close friends and GDC is not in your close friends, then you cannot see that as well. So they will not detect instantly that you're getting the XPs or not. So obviously the only benefit from sharing the stories and stuff is getting the Me6 XP, and it's quite a lot. It's 1,000 Me6 XP. So it will help you in short term and also probably in long term, because getting 1,000 XP is kind of a big deal there as well. All right. Another thing I also want to talk about before we move on is the YouTube uploads. Like I've said, if I am playing a video or something, I always attach timestamps. So be sure to use that wisely, because I know that these meetings are like 15 minutes long, and I don't want you to be watching all of these things if you already know some topics. Like let's say, for example, you already know the lighting already. So let's say you're confused in this video about levels. So you could just literally go at 23.01. The timestamp is already attached there, and just start watching the video from there. Obviously, for those who are not, joining the meetings, you can obviously skip the first for 6 or 7 minutes of the meeting, because I always talk about the meeting agenda and then what happened in the previous meeting. You probably might want to see what happened in the previous meeting, but really it does not apply to you if you're not joining the meetings and all. And I'm not specifically saying to not those who are joining the meeting. I'm specifically saying it to those who are watching this YouTube video, who's watching this YouTube video right now, and you're just kind of confused, what do I do? So just use the timestamps wisely, because I kind of did that. I spent some time myself to make those timestamps for you. All right, so today, That's all I wanted to talk about the meeting recap and stuff. So now what I'm going to talk about is tags. Okay, because I kind of gave some sort of teaser to you all what tags was. So let's actually learn a bit about tags before we start implementing and finalizing our game today. All right, so let me just open the presentation. Give it a moment. All right, that seems good. All right, so tags. In the previous meeting, we talked a bit about levels and all that kind of stuff. And to just give a brief recap, so let me just go back to Unity. If I go to this Unity project right now, right, I believe that we've made an air obstacle. We've made different obstacles have a script called object hit that, if you hit that object, you're going to get a specific color. Right, but actually, let's go back to the script. Let's actually know a bit about what I'm trying to talk about here. Okay, in the object hit, the thing was we use this method called onCollisionEnter, which is a built-in method by Unity. This method really says that if the script that this object is using, so whatever object the script is on, the specific script, so let's just say the obstacles in this scenario, whatever that's outside the surroundings of that object and it hits it, then it's gonna do whatever is within this code. That's within the curly brackets, okay? And whatever is within that curly brackets is gonna output that statement inside of your program, right? So what we did is inside of this parentheses, we call it a parameter. So we're gonna pass in some value inside of this method and access it so we can output something accordingly. So in this scenario, we use a collision other. So the data type is collision. So anything that has a collider, any object that has a collider. So for example, the character has a collider, like a box collider. The ground has a collider. It's also a box collider. So anything that's in the environment has a collider, some sort of collider, like capsule collider, spherical collider, box collider, as I said. We talk about colliders a lot. You can go back to that section if you're still confused. But anything that's a collider and it touches it, well, that will trigger the program to run what is within this code, what is within this method. Okay, so ignore the if statement and the hit thing. We're going to get over that right now. But the only thing in the previous meeting we added was this thing, that whenever we hit something, then we should trigger the object that has this, that the script is on to change the color to blue. For me, it was blue. For some of you guys, you could have changed it to black or to red, to whatever color you want. But I changed it to blue. So it's triggering that. But the thing is, if we play the game, right? So now let's say we apply this object hit obstacle on the air obstacle. So let's actually just zoom in here. The air obstacle is here, right? Now, what happens if it's on the air, it's going to fall down. So it is most likely that the first thing it will be touching is the ground. Not the character, but the ground. And we mentioned that in the code, we made this sort of parameter called other. Okay, we made this parameter called other that stores the type of collider it has. So it could be any type of collider in the environment. We have not specified in the code that it has to only be, this program should only run if that other collider is specifically the player itself. Okay, so if you play the game, actually what will happen is your score will increment, right? So if you actually go to the score thing, it's actually going to, we're going to talk a bit more about the score. It's probably not on that. But let's say like you wanted to, let's say the score wasn't its own script, but let's say you're going to increment some score variable from doing this. Well, it's going to increment that thing as well. It's not going to only going to increment if it's just the player and the obstacle hitting. It's going to just be anything whenever the obstacle hits. So that's going to cause some problems. Okay, so in this game, we want to make sure that the color does not change. It's not talking about the score, but in this scenario, we only want the object to change only if that object that this script is on touches specifically the player, nothing else. Okay, so it shouldn't change color if I touch the ground. It should only touch only if that object, let's say this air obstacle, only touches the player. Okay, so what we do here is we use tags. Tags is that thing, that solution to what we need to do. So let's just learn a bit about tags. The tags are always located on the object, and it's just some sort of feature that Unity offered to us. And it's always below the thing that's in the inspector panel. There's actually a section for it called tag, and it has a drop-down menu. Okay, so you can actually select as many tags as you want. It has many different type of options. So think of tag like a label. you're trying to communicate. It's a good way to communicate between you and the computer, or in this case, Unity, to say that this thing is the player, this thing is the enemy, this thing is that. So you're trying to like add a sticky note on this character, like a virtual hypothetical sticky note, to tell the computer that okay, this is a player, that is an enemy, this is that. So you're just trying to act like, you know, Adam and Eve trying to name animals and stuff, if you want to think of that analogy. But that's what tags are essentially. It just helps the computer and you identify easily what each things are. Okay, so when you click on the drop down arrow, you're gonna see these different options. So it is basically like a word. Okay, you link to one or more game objects. So it could be like what, enemies. It could be player. Over here we don't have enemies, so we could actually add a tag. So you could add as many tags as you want. It could be as many as you want. And I'm also gonna teach you how to add those tags. But it could basically be anything. You could call it anything essentially. And Unity has already made these built-in pre-made names for you, so you could select them if you would like. As I said, they're pre-made tags, but you need to manually put them in. So you cannot just automatically say that, hey, this is already the player, and Unity will just notice that, okay, you made a main player object and Unity should recognize that. No, Unity is not that smart yet. Hopefully, maybe in the future version, they could try doing that. But right now, at the moment, including the newer versions, you still need to manually select those tags. Okay, and by default, when you make a new game object, it will always have the untagged tag, which basically means it just has no tag on it. That's just another word to use. Okay, so let's actually talk a bit about the pros and cons. Obviously, tag is a really, really great tool, but there's also pros and cons to it. The pros about it is you can only use one type of tag for each game object. Okay, so if I go back and let's say I click on the character, I already gave a tag, which is player, which is a built-in thing, but I can only choose one tag. I cannot choose more than one. So it kind of saves that kind of confusion. It kind of protects you and prevents you from that actually happening. It's also very simple to use, right? You can actually just see that there's literally an option here and just change it within like 1 or 2 clicks. Let's just say 2 clicks here. It's that simple. It's not really that hard to use once you start getting more used to it. Another thing is it's actually making clear for code, and we'll see that later. So if I actually go in this code right now, it's just this simple. It's just this one line statement to just set something with the certain tag, and you could just help identify what each things are in the code as well. So it better help understand the coder, and also just simplifies the code as well, which is really great. This is one of the greatest things that we need to make sure as a programmer. We try to simplify and concise our code as much as we can, not try to complex it and much. Obviously, your program should be complex and really cool, but at the same time, your program shouldn't be very messy. It should be very concise and clear. Okay, let's just go back here. And obviously, there is a few cons to it. One is that you need to use a string reference. Okay, string reference is basically you try to reference something in the code with some sort of string. The thing with strings is, if I actually go back, I can just literally give a good explanation to you. This is basically a string, right? Anything that's within quotation. So for us, it's blue. It has to spell exactly as it is as the tag. So over here, it's capital P player. Now, if I put lowercase p player, it's not going to identify. And that is why string, all this kind of string reference, it's actually very dangerous in some sort of way. You need to be very careful when you're using it. You need to make sure that and ensure that it's exactly spelled as it is. Otherwise, you're going to get some error in your code, and obviously no one wants errors. Okay. Another thing is, yes, you need to rename it in 2 different places. So let's say that, okay, maybe we made a thing, right? I made a new tag called hit. Let's say I wanted to call it something else. Well, basically, I have to manually change the hit thing here. And at the same time, I have to go back to the code and manually change the places where I put hit to that exact other thing. So that kind of, it's time consuming, and that's what I wanted to talk about. It kind of becomes really annoying and a bit laborious in terms of mentality, if you think of it. And it's really, really not fun to do, okay? And obviously, nothing keeps you honest, right? So what I'm trying to say here is, when I say nothing keeps you honest, sometimes it's not easy to notice just because the object name is character, it's guaranteed it has a tag. Because this thing is really small to notice, that's when it kind of makes trust issues in your game. Sometimes you just don't even know that it has a tag player. So it kind of causes some problems there in the future code. Like, let's say you have so many different objects in your game, and let's say on your character you forgot to just put that player tag. Well, you might assume that just from the character object, it's called character, so you assume that it should already have that player tag. That's where your trust issues happen, because sometimes you just forget to add this. So that's what I wanted to talk about. It's not really, really trustworthy all the time. So you need to make sure that the thing actually has tags. So before you run the game, always make sure you click on the character and ensure that this thing has that specific tag you need. Okay, that's what I want to talk about, and I think that's really it with tags. So let's just talk about how I want to do it. In my game, how my approach is that whenever this object, these air obstacles or any obstacles, hits this, I don't really want it to increment again. That's the idea. Like the score thing. What happens is if I keep on hitting these objects here, right, and it turns blue for me, if I hit it again, the score will increment again. But in my game, in this scenario, I don't want it to increment whenever the color changes. So it's kind of like a benefit for the user themselves. So it kind of I don't know if it's good or bad or not. Maybe it's bad depending on how you're using your score. Maybe score could be deaths, or score could be mistakes, or score could be like number of points earned. But for me in the game, it's that whenever the object has changed its color, then you kind of wanna tell the computer that the player shouldn't be getting more scores again when it hits that specific object that's colored. Okay, so my idea, just want to say it again, is whenever I hit an object that's already colored, the color has changed. I don't want to increment the score points again. What I mean by the score points is, remember in the console, we were getting those things where we said that okay, we can increment the score and it just says the amount of times that it's hit. That's what I'm trying to talk about the score. So I just to give a brief recap, it's like this thing that you see in the console. The player made this many hits, and it just shows the score hit variable. Okay, I've already done these things for you. Like I have already made the code for you, but I will just give a brief by brief explanation. First of all, what we need to make a new tag. Okay, and you want to make this tag called like something hit, like meaning whenever you have touched something, whenever you have hit something accidentally, you want to make it hit. Oops, I don't know what happened. Hold on. Sorry about that. So whenever you have hit something, uh, you wanna tell the computer that this object is now at a hit tag. So what we can do, essentially, is we could make a tag called hit. I have already made it, but let me teach you how to make your own tag, because you'll probably not see this in your own game project. So what we do is we click on add tag, and the add tag, you want to click on this plus sign and add a new tag. So let's just say for me, I already added hit, but I'm just going to add a random thing. So let's just say in the future games, I'm just going to put enemies. So then you just click on save, and you've already added a tag. So now if you go back to the character, you can see the option called enemies. And it's that simple. That's how you make a tag, and it's super, super cool. All right, so for me, especially for the character, what you guys want to do first is make the character get, oops, sorry. What you want to do for the character prefab, make sure it gets the player tag. Okay, if it doesn't have the player tag, then this is not going to work. So just try to make sure that this thing automatically, like once you start opening a game, ensure this has player tag. Because you're trying to just tell the computer this is the main player in the game, and it's just going to simplify your code more. Okay, so we're not going to assign anything for hit right now. We're actually going to assign it in the code. So what we will do is we're going to go inside of the object hit, which is in all the obstacles. So if you see in the obstacles, they already have this object hit script, which we added in the previous lecture. So what we can do is within that code, we can make that object get that tag once it's collided and got its color. So then this is where the if statement comes in. So how we reference other objects is if other is this parameter we got. So this is any collider that's in the environment. Dot game object. So that should be whatever that is in the environment should be a game object. And dot tag is another thing that's within of a game object. So a game object can have many different stuffs within it. And one of the things you can get or access is its tag. Think of it like a component, but for the game object. And equal sign is used in if statements. Remember, one equal sign is assigning something, and two equal sign is just making sure that this thing equals to this thing. It's like a true or false statement, whether this and this is equal or it's not. So if this is equal to each other, then it becomes true, right? And if statements only run if whatever is within this parentheses is true. Oops, so let me just Control Z that. So what you guys need to know is the way to reference other things, like to say if the whatever's in the environment has this tag player, you would be using this specific code. And how you would know this is that other is a reference. Game object is another reference that is a reference within another reference. So let's just say game object is a reference within the other thing. And game object has its own component called tag. And we want to make sure that tag is equal to player. In other words, the player for us is the character. So whenever that character touches that object, only if that's the case, then we should run the statements below that is given us. And in this scenario, that's the only if statement we have. So in other words, this program, this method, will only run if this statement has passed. Sorry, if this condition has passed. So then we could put the get component within this thing, so it will change the color to blue. But then we could change the tag of the game object this thing is in. So we can just literally make it game object.tag. So we don't need to say this.game object. Unity can automatically recognize if you put game object, then you're referring to the object that's within that the script is on. Okay, then you can just say game object.tag and we'll automatically make it equal to hit. Okay, so let's actually run this program. Let me actually show you this. And I'm just probably gonna, let's just give it some time to load the game, maybe. I don't know why it's taking a lot. Okay, there you go. Let me just show you something. So let's just say I clicked on this. Just look at the right side of the screen. If I'm moving and I touch this, you can see that it automatically gets the tag hit. Now this is actually a very remarkable thing, because we can now find a way to say that, okay, if we're gonna hit, if this player is gonna hit anything in the environment that has that tag hit, then don't increment the score. Okay, so now what we can do is, since we have automatically found a way to permanently get that hit tag, we can now go to the scorer script. Okay, and we can do the same thing. We still have that on collision enter here, which is that method. But now we could do another if statement here. The only thing that we did here were just two things before. There was no if statement. It was just score hit plus plus, which basically means you increment the score by 1, meaning you just increase the score by 1. It's just this amazing tool, that amazing shortcut that Unity has made for us for C#. And then we just want to debug in the console that this player has made many hits, and then we make this variable that stores the amount of hits this thing has made. Right? So what we can do is we can tell the computer to only run this program if that player script, if that player cube, let's not say script, if that player object is colliding anything in the environment that is not tagged with the word hit. So we can think it in an opposite manner. A lot of people would say, okay, if it's equal to hit, then do nothing. Else, then do something else. But that is kind of like a long way to do it, and it's very time consuming. So I want to teach you like a more simple way to do this, a simple approach to this. And the way that you can do it is just exclamation mark equal sign. So a lot of you guys in the previous, not you guys, if you see in the previous thing, we saw 2 equal signs, right? We saw this 2 equal sign, and now we're looking at an exclamation mark equal sign. So what an exclamation mark equal sign is just another way of saying does not equal to. Okay, it's just the opposite of saying it's equal to something. So in this scenario, we're trying to say that if any game object in this environment that this object is in, the script is in, and the surrounding thing around them is not having some certain tag called hit. So if it's not having this tag called hit on that object that's in the environment, then run this program. But if there is an object that has the tag hit, then don't make that run the program. Don't do this then. So it's just another approach. It's an opposite approach to this, and it just makes the program much shorter and simple to understand. Okay. And it also prevents a lot of debugging errors, because the more concise your code is, the larger the chance of your code being not that buggy in some sort of way. So this is just a simple approach. Just use the exclamation mark equal sign when you want to say does not equal to something. And in this scenario, we want to say that this statement below, the score should increment, and we should see something in the console that says how much score we have, only when this player object in the game, which is this basically, the character I have, is hitting the obstacles in the environment that does not have the tag hit. Okay, which is over here. Right now it's all untagged because the game is not playing. because we found a way to just code the tag in the game. So whenever we hit something, then the obstacle should automatically get the tag hit. Okay, so it's a very simple approach to making in making greater solutions for the game. And this is going to be one of your tasks in your own project when you're going to be finalizing your game tonight or tomorrow and sharing it tomorrow or whenever you need to. That is going to be probably one of your tasks, and you want to make sure that your code is concise and it's working, and the score is not increasing when you hit a colored obstacle. Whenever you hit the obstacle, it changes colored. If you hit that again, the score shouldn't be incrementing. It should do nothing basically. Okay, so that's how tags can help us in this scenario. It can help us label things in the game. Essentially, it just brings a better communication between you and the Unity game engine, so that you both can be on the same page. So Unity can know that, okay, this thing that's in the game, that's a player, and this other thing in the game, okay, so if the player has hit this and the color has changed, okay, then that obstacle gets the label hit, so that in the other script where it's scorer, it will whenever the player hits this thing, it will not perform this stuff. And it's a really, really, really versatile tool, and hopefully we'll get more in touch with it, and hopefully this can help you understand a bit more about what tags are. If you still don't know what tags are, don't worry. We're gonna still go over it in the few lectures, but hopefully this should be a great way to introduce it. All right. If you're still confused about it, just be sure to reach out in Unity channel, and I can help clarify that for you if you'd like. Okay. One final thing though, before we do end the game, before I teach you how to build the game and export it so that other people can play it in the GDC server, we're gonna try to make something cool, something interesting. We call this a spinner obstacle. Okay, so we see that like in few games, there's just this automated obstacle that keeps on moving. It's like a spiral merry-go-round stuff. So just to give some illustration about what I'm trying to talk about, I have done this. I've made something like this in the level 3 of my game. You could apply this in any levels of your game if you'd like. So let me just show you what I did. So over here, you can see that there are weird looking stuff over here, right? There are weird looking lines that looks rectangularish but very thin. If I play the game, you'll kind of understand what I'm trying to say here. So just give me a moment. So you can see that, let me just maybe maximize so that you guys can see what I'm trying to say. If I'm moving my game, right, you can see that this thing is just automatically spinning forever. You can see that this thing is automatically spinning. And it just kind of makes the game a bit more, well, obstacle course, something more fun. Because that's the entire point about making video games. You're trying to make the game, well, fun, entertaining. You're trying to make whoever's trying to play your game, make them enjoy it. That's the purpose of making video games at the first place. All right, and I obviously have this goal place over here, so if I click on this, I should just instantly go back to the level 1 of my game. All right, so you might be wondering, how do I even do this, right? So what you can do is you can make like a random object. What I did is I just basically duplicated one of the obstacles, and I just used the R tool, which brings up the scale tool, and I just, I basically went hands-on with it and changed the size of everything. I went with 10, 1, 1. That's how I did stuff here. I didn't change. Remember, just look at the top. I didn't change any rotations. Be sure to make sure that all the rotations here are set to 0 to avoid any problems, okay? And I just put them around the place wherever I wanted. But this is what I did. I made a new script. I called this script spinner. Okay, it should kind of make sense. Make your C# script a bit more sensible, reasonable to understand, so that when other people are trying to debug your game, trying to understand what's the problem, make sure your scripts make sense. Like it's doing what it's supposed to be doing based on what you put inside that script. So when I make this new C# script, I removed the start method. So the only thing I put was an update method. Okay, and I put 3 serialized field variables: the X angle, the Y angle, and the Z angle. And they all have a data type called float. I use float, not integers, because I wanted to use decimal values. If you use integers, you can only use whole numbers, so like 0, 1, 2, 3, but not values like 1.5, 1.34, or 3.141596, which is the pi value. But I wanted to use float because I can go more hands-on with it and kind of go more in depth on what value I want. But one thing I also want to give a note on is I didn't initialize any value for this. I didn't like say equals to 0. Right? And why do you think that's the case? Well, I just deleted the variable name. This is actually because this is an instance variable. Now, you might be asking, RR, what in the world is an instance variable? Let me just explain. Instance variables are any variables that are made outside of a method. Okay, this is any method, any variable that's made within a class, but not in a method. We call them instance variables. And one thing that an instance variable can do is you don't need to give any value to it. If you just say float x angle, Unity by default will understand that and say, okay, if you put no value in the beginning, they assume that it starts at 0. So basically, saying float x angle is the same as saying float x angle is equal to 0. Okay, so either one is okay, but usually game developers just like to keep it simple and concise by just typing float x angle, assuming that you already know that if you do this already, the value should already start from 0. Okay, it doesn't start from any other variable. If you just initialize a variable like this, the value that it will store is just 0, depending on what you're storing as well. So this is a float, right? So it should be storing a number. So any variable that's a number, it's going to store some sort of number, is going to start off with 0 if you initialize it like this. And obviously, I made it serialized field so that if I go back to Unity and I add that to any obstacles I have in the environment, so it's spinner, for example. So if I access the spinner component, I can manually change the values. And the cool part is I can drag the values like this over here, and you could just tweak them out. And one great thing about doing that is in playtesting, because you need to keep on playtesting a lot to make your game look really great. Okay, so let me just give an example. Let's just click on. Oops, sorry. Let's just click on this one. Okay, I'm just gonna play the game for a moment, and I'm gonna explain why as I move on. If I play the game. Oops, I was clicking on the wrong keys, my bad. If you see that thing is moving, right? Now, if I go down, in the playtesting, the cool part is I can just tweak the value how much I want. So I could just change it to, 6, and it's going to go so fast. If I change it to 20, I'm pretty sure it's going to go insanely fast. But I'm going to leave it to 0.7. I think that was the value. But the cool part is, even if I change any values I want and I stop playing the game, the value will reset to 0.7. And that's the great thing about serialized field, because if you messed up your game, you messed up your playtesting, everything will reset to its original value. But as I said, that could also be a bad thing. That means you have to record the data when you're playtesting so that you don't forget it. Usually it's just memory. Sometimes some people can just remember it. I can also kind of remember it. But what I'm trying to say. But you could also manipulate the other variables as well. As you can see here, it's going really crazy right now with stuff. You can also see that So what I'm trying to say that I made a variable, each unique variables for each different angles, so that every variable can be independent of each other. So I can manipulate each variables independently, and nothing has to depend on each other, which is something that's really great in game development. But let's just say I just stopped the game. As I said, everything resets, and that's the great thing about game development in Unity. Okay. So now you're wondering, how was I able to, do all this stuff? Well, basically, it's a really simple thing. I use transform, which is a component, obviously, in the game object itself, as we can see here. Transform is a component, and obviously, you don't need to reference this at all, because the script already knows that it's on a particular game object, and it should already recognize. Oh, okay, so this is from the transform component, and we're accessing a method. So anything that's in purple or another color than this is a method. And this is a method from this reference. And this method basically does the rotation from this. So this is actually from the rotation component of the transform, which is over here. And it's asking you to prompt 3 values. Now, how do I know it's 3 values? Well, if you hover over the thing on the method, you could actually see all the things that they're asking for. They're asking for the X angle, the Y angle, and the Z angle. And what I recommend is always name your variables as the parameter itself. So what you can do is, like, let's just say I deleted it. If I type transform, I spelled it wrong, didn't I? If I do transform.rotate, I can just click enter, and it will automatically write it for me. Okay? And this is because X angle is just literally a parameter itself for this method. That's the name of the parameter. That's the name of this thing that we're trying to access. So if you make the variable the same as a parameter, you actually don't need to waste a lot of time typing each variables individually, and it just saves a lot of time. So this is one tip as a game developer, that as an advice that I want to give to you all. All right, we would put this in the update method because we need to keep on updating the rotation of the object every single frame, right? Because the update method keeps on running every single frame in the game, every time it's running, obviously. Okay, and this rotate method will allow us to use each different values we have in the game, in the object, each different values of the rotation, and manipulate it. For me though, for this specific thing, I was only manipulating the x angle. And I think also for the other things, I'm manipulating the x angle as well. I set it to 0.7 according to many playtesting because I feel like that's a good amount for at least my game. But what I want you guys to do at your own time is that I also want you to spend a few minutes of your time trying to play the game, play test it using different values, go crazy with it, understand what values seem the best, and record the final result and just save that value as what you want for a specific variable. Okay? And that's the great phenomenon about making methods, is that you could make serialized field and just make your own method, literally, just like a Photoshop feature. You could literally make like your own feature in your own game, which is not a Unity inbuilt function. And I really like that because Unity has made all these things for you, but you can also make that as well, as we see here, and that's so amazing. That just makes you get a lot of freedom in making your own games. And hopefully, when you do submit your own games, I hope to see that happening as well. Okay, and that's actually how you make a spinner. That just makes the game a bit more fun and everything, and hopefully your game will also be a bit more fun from applying that concept as well. Okay, before I do move on to the final thing, which is about basically basically like talking about how to export your game, how to finalize the game, how to run it and stuff, I want to talk a bit about what I did about the goal. Okay. So a lot of you will get this problem. The way I found a solution about changing the build index whenever the player goes to the goal and increments and goes to the next level. One way that I have done was I use scene manager dot get active scene build index +1. So what this is doing, this thing over here is trying to just say it's getting the build index of the current scene you're on, and I'm just adding that with 1 basically. Right, so when I'm adding with 1, that means I'm going to the next scene, basically. That's in your build settings. Now, if you don't know what's your next scene, always go to File and Build Settings, and you could check what's up here. And this seems in order. Make sure it is in order, and each thing has its own index. So, for example, level 1 is build index of 0. Remember, anything that's in C#, like a list, the first index on the list is 0. And this is something like a list, if you think of it, the build index for the scenes. It's just like a list that it has for different scenes that Unity has simplified just with UI for you guys. But it's a bit like a list, and you're trying to access the build index for that current scene that you're on. And once you access that build index, you put that in the code, which is load scene, and you put the build index here. It's gonna load that scene, right? So if I put just 0 here, if I'm in level 2 of the game, then I'll go back to 0. I'll go back to level 1 of the game. If I'm on level 1 of the game, I'll still go back to level 1 of the game. So we cannot stick with that method. We need to find a new convenient method that can help us just go further. But one problem that you'll encounter is just putting this statement inside of this code. It's gonna do nothing, because what happens is level 3 is our final level, and that is a build index of 2. So let's say you're on the final game. You're on the final level of the game, and you +1. But that means you're out of range. You're out of the range. There is no build index 3. There is no scene that you stored in the build settings that has a build index of 3. You can see that clearly here. There is no scene with a build index of 3 because there isn't. We only have 3 scenes. That means the maximum number for a build index should be 2. So what I did is I made an if-else statement. So I said that if scene manager, that build index of the current scene you're on, if it's not equal to 2, well, what do I mean if it's not equal to 2? Basically, the idea is build index 2 is the last level of the game. So basically, in other words, if the current scene that you're on is not the last level of the game, then keep on incrementing it. However, if that is not the case, which means that you are on the last level of the game and your build index is 2, then just go back to the beginning of the game. Now this could be different for you guys. If you did make a final, level scene, like good job, you won the game, then sure, you can make a new thing and add the scene. But for me, I haven't I haven't done that. I kind of just I didn't really care about it because we'll learn about that. We'll learn about the death scenes and the win scene more in the future projects. So for me, I just said that when I reach the final level, I just want to play the game again, and I just go back to level 1. So that is what I did with my code. That just scene manager dot load scene 0, because 0 is the build index for level 1 scene according to the build settings in our game. Okay, so that's how I talked about. That's what I wanted to talk a bit about, because I know that a lot of you might encounter that problem when you're trying to do some build settings. If you successfully did it, then good job. You are doing really well in this current game project. And if you're not doing well, don't worry. You're still trying. And that's what I really want to see from you all. You're trying and you're doing your best. Okay? So yeah, that's basically it in terms of what I wanted to talk about, the build settings. Now, before we, finalize this class and I let you guys go, I wanted to talk about how to export your game. Like I actually have exported my game, as you can see here, and it actually has its own logo. And if I actually play this game like right now, and I'm gonna also teach you guys about this as well, because this might help you a bit in terms of showing off. So let's give it a moment to load the game. If it can't load the game, then I'm sorry. Maybe a bit. Okay, it is running. Obviously, this is a free version, so we'll say made with Unity. And I'm just going to play the game as I'm supposed to be playing. Alright? So this is what's actually your game. This is technically what your game will be like, okay? You're going to probably be playing your game like this. But the cool part is that if I go to Discord, right? I can actually make my status as the game. The game that I'm playing is going to be my status. And since your game is a Unity game, you can actually add that into your game activity. Maybe a lot of you know how to add your game in your game activity, but I'm going to teach you guys how to do this. And it's actually going to be really, really fun. All right, so let's actually get right into it. And I also have my own logo for my game. I just made it a random logo. All right, I don't know why I have two different things, but I also made a thing where if I press escape key, I just leave the game. And I think a lot of you guys know how to do that because I explained a bit, but I will go over that shortly if you need help on that. All right, so yeah, let's go back to the slides. So how to start off? Like, how in the freaking world do we start off? There's 7 steps to this, I believe. But the first thing is to ensure that when you go to your build settings, you have all the scenes added. If you don't, then just make sure you did that and make sure it's in the right order. And just play test everything. If all goes well, do that. And the way you do is, again, go to File, Build Settings, and check that everything is mentioned here and it's checked mark. If it's not checked mark, make sure you checked it mark. Or if you just don't want that in your game, you can just leave it unchecked if you would like. But yeah, that's what you want to do first. That is the first step. And for me, I have done that. As I've said, I've checked everything. This is actually my own game, as you can see, and everything looks great. So we can go to the next step, which is to remove the unnecessary quality settings. Now, this is for those. This really apply to those, especially if your computer isn't running that well. Okay, so what you can do, if you go to Edit, so let me just actually do that again. If I go to Edit and Project Settings, and I go to, I think if it's Graphics, right? No, it's not Graphics, it's Quality. Over here, you can actually decide for each different platform what options you would like. Usually, people will just leave it as default, but really, if you feel like there are just some really unnecessary things, like very low and low. Obviously, if you really have a friend who cannot run a game at a high speed or at low settings, then obviously you need to keep that on. But sometimes, you need to delete some of them. So for me, as a recommendation, the things that I would really, really recommend removing is very high and I believe low. And if you have a friend that does really, and if you don't really have a friend who has terrible PC setups, then you can obviously remove this, and perhaps also remove maybe very high, because obviously ultra is probably going to go great for you. But try to remove some if you feel like some are unnecessary. For me, I'll just keep them all. You could also keep them all if you'd like. But this is just a kind of a quick tip to help build your game faster, okay? If that's done, the next thing you have to do, and I think I have to move my camera for this. Okay. The next thing you're going to have to do is you need to import your icon. Okay, when I say icon, that is going to be the profile picture for your game. All right, there are many game projects. There are many game files with their own logo. So in other words, this is going to be the game logo for your thing. Okay, so what I'm trying to say, I think, if you don't understand, it's those things below here. These things are icons for their own apps. Discord has their own icon. The Files app have their own icon. Google has their own icon. So if you want to add your own icon, which is free to do, you could add that. So what you need to do is just probably add that maybe wherever is necessary. I added mine in the materials, and maybe it's not the most convenient place to do that, but I just did it, and mine was the logo RR, which is just one random thing I had, and I selected that to be my logo. All right, so make sure you first import that. I recommend using like Photoshop or something and making it a PNG file if you want to get that transparency, like that circle look or square look, something like what Discord has, like that transparency. Then make sure it's a PNG. Try to use Photoshop if you have. And after you're done and you imported it, which is like over here, make sure that this is Sprite. So usually it will go to default, but change it to Sprite, which is 2D and UI, and change the compression method from whatever it's here, usually be normal quality, but set it to none. Okay, and then click apply after you're done. Right now I don't need to click apply because I've done all the changes as needed. But then what will happen is your looks for that icon will turn from something like this with something that has an arrow. Okay, and that will allow you to it will allow you to just use it as that icon, which I'll explain later in the future steps, which is I think the next steps. So you can, if you want to go back and understand how to do these things, it's already linked in the keynote in the GDC channel, and sorry, not GDC channel, in the GDC server. It's in the keynote keynote channel, and you could access this whenever you want. Okay. The next step is now, well, to add that. Okay. Well, what we have to do is we have to go back to edit, project settings. We have to go to player. Okay. And on top, this is where you type your company name. So if you have any company names, you can do it. For now, just do anything random, anything hilarious, because none of you have a company yet. For me, I just put the GDC and the product name, wherever the product name is. This is where you type the game's name. So that is going to be the name of the game that you will see on your Discord activity status over here. And basically everywhere. If you open the file, that is going to be the name of the game, that file name of the game. So for me, I just call it like RR just Maze Game, but you could call it whatever you want. You could joke around sometimes, like maybe something that's age appropriate. Maybe that would be better. But yes, that is something you should look out for. So this is basically where you want to change the name of the game that you have. This is called, they call it product name. I don't know why they did that, but I just want to clarify that this is the place where you change the name for your game. Okay, now this is actually where you would put your logo. Basically, what I would just do is just drag it like that, and if it's blue, like you can see over here, if it's blue, that means that you can actually put it there. So if you just release it, I've already done it for me, for myself, but that's how you do it. The default icon is where you'll see the logo below whenever you run your game. Okay. And default cursor, just set this to normal, whatever it is. Don't worry about that. Leave all settings as it is. And yeah, that's basically it for that side, that part of the game. So this is like basically where you could just start customizing your stuff for the game and stuff. Okay. Also, one thing to make sure that you want to make sure that this resizable window option, which is over here, right? It's really small, but make sure it's turned on. Okay, so that is over here, as you can see, resizable window. Just keep that on, and you're good to go, and you can go to the next step. Again, this is found in the edit and project settings. This is also applicable to 2D games if that's the case for you, but for now I recommend using 3D games. The next step now is to make a directory. So what I mean by directory is, for Windows it might look different, but basically go to your folder. When I say directories, it's just like a folder. So for me, I stored my game projects in some folder called game projects, and there are so many other game projects out there, but choose the game project with the title that matches the project that you're currently working on. And over there, you want to right click and you want to create a new folder, right? And you want to call it builds. Okay, and inside of builds, make two folders. one for Mac and one for Windows. This is because if you're trying to render a game, you will most probably need to make a file for both platforms so that you can send it to different people as needed. Like maybe some people may use Mac, some people may use Windows. So just for organizational reasons, for organizational purposes, make sure you do it for both. For Mac, that is really the case. But for Windows, inside of Windows, make two different folders. One that is x86 and one that is x86 underscore 64. And it's underscore 64. That just means it's 64-bit. It's not really as different as x86 because 64-bit computers like what I'm using right now and probably yours as well. It can also run games on x86. And if it's a really simple game like what we're making, there's not really a big difference between both performance if you render it. So for now, I'm just going to leave it with x86. Okay, and when you store that, when you click on build and you store that game over there, this is where all your games are located. Okay, and that's what I mean by directories. You want to just kind of make a place where you could store all your game files as needed, and it just makes your organizational skills much, much, much better for you. Okay, and then finally, build the game. So over here, first of all, you need to select which platform you're targeting. If you're on Windows, first target for your own platform so you can play test it. And then if you're saying, okay, that's good enough, then you could change it for, Macintosh as well if you'd like. For architecture, I left it at x86 as needed. You could change it to x86 on 64-bit if you'd like, but it's not really a problem. I don't know why this is here. I'm really sorry. This arrow is not supposed to be here, so just ignore that. But just click build. Okay, so now when I click, let me just show you. If I click on build, it's going to ask you where to store that. So you're going to have to first go to your game file and then go to builds. Then if it's for Windows, obviously, then save it over here. Now ignore these things because obviously at the first time, you're going to see nothing over here. But you select this folder and it's going to automatically start building your game and exporting it. Building is another word for exporting in Unity. Building is just that other weird word that Unity decided to use for some reason. But I guess it's okay. And that's when you could actually play your game finally. And when you open, there should be like this. There are many different files. Do not open the folders. You can just right click and probably click on properties if you're confused. But usually anything that has your icon on it is the case. But it should definitely have an exe file on it if you're wondering what file to choose. Okay? And that's really how you make a game. And if you just double click on it, you could play the game and you're good to go. All right? Now, one final step though, when you're trying to share the game with other people, it's that you cannot just share the exe file and just assume that they can play the game. They will need other things which are like data files made by Unity, which is like within those folders that I said, mono bleeding edge and whatever this is underscore data. Okay, your game's name underscore data. That is going to consist of all the information. It's going to contain all the stuff that the game really needs. So without that, if you have the exe file, the computer will prompt like, oh my god, I cannot run the game. And you probably need to get some additional files, which is probably missing in your computer. So what you need to do is you need to make a zip file of it. So it could be RAR file if you'd like. I maybe recommend RAR if that's the case for Windows. But just add to archive and change the name as needed, and you're going to get an archives file. Then what you can do is if you're like, if you want to say, hey, I want to share my game, you could either share it in off topic or maybe in submissions, but I don't think there'll be any assignments to share like a RAR file because I'm not going to be checking it. But what you can do is just, drag it and just, submit it. And that's basically it in terms of your game. You're basically done and you can share your games to other people and they can play it as well. And the way they have to do it is just compress it. And that's basically it. You have finally exported your game, you finally build your game, and you can enjoy your first ever game project in Unity. All right, so congratulations to you all. This is the first game project that we've all completed, and I'm really proud of you all, and keep on working hard, okay? But before we end this meeting, I wanted to talk a bit about exiting the application. All right, I don't know where I put this. Okay, so I made a method called quit game. It's in the update method. I call this thing called refactoring. Refactoring, remember, as I said, is a way to simplify your code by just making a method which will consist of that all different codes as needed. right? So instead of making uh, 4 lines in the code, I could just simplify it to one line, where I could just extend the script with a void or method called quitGame, which will consist the if else statement, or in this scenario, which is just if statement. So before, I didn't actually have a method called quitGame. I actually just had this if statement and just put it in the update method. But I wanted to simplify the code more, try to debug it in a way, even though there was no problem. But in other words, to just try organizing my code as much as possible. Okay, but I want to make sure, and this is going to be one of the requirements in your game if you're ever going to submit it. I'm not even going to look at your game if you don't have this. But you should have an option where you could quit your game. Okay, and as I said, if you press the escape key on your computer, you should be able to quit your game. And this is literally that command. So if it's just saying if input.getKey, remember that's another way, it's another approach to getting your code. Back then we were using get access, right? In the previous lectures, we moved from get key to get access because it's more convenient. But since we're just talking about escape key here, we can just use get key because both Mac and Windows have it. You can just say input.getKey, keycode.escape, and if that's the case, you can just say application.quit. So application is a reference to this method called quit, and this method it's just a method made by Unity that will allow you to essentially quit your application. All right, so make sure you have this in your code somewhere, possibly in the character move script, and basically you're done. And you could probably share this game as soon as you can, and I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with your own ideas. Okay, so what I want you guys to do today is I'll be sharing out some assignments in the assignments channel. Be sure to look at Instagram. So if you haven't shared, the Instagram story yet, be sure to get that 1,000 XP as soon as you can, and also 1,000 GDC coins. And be sure to participate in that competition contest. You will get a lot of rewards for submitting your game file. But don't worry, don't start working on it right now. I will be giving a rubric file that will contain everything as needed, and that will guide you along in developing your finalized stuff in the game. Okay? Yeah, so that's basically it for today's meeting. I hope you've enjoyed, and yeah, I'll see you in the next lecture when we'll begin our next game project. So stay creative, guys. See ya.